On tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the Watchmen and Damon Lindelof, season limits of television series, and the Avengers Cast, Where Are They Now? Plus much more. I'm Garrett.
I'm Joe. And this is the Aliens and Cowboys podcast.
Welcome in, Joe. How are we doing this evening?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I know that we don't do a video podcast, so I know the audience can't see this, but prior to this, felt like a Breaking Bad episode in here as we chased a fly for literally 15 minutes trying to kill it.
Yeah, the funny thing is that we had just been talking about this. I still have not seen Breaking Bad.
Yes.
But you were discussing this with someone else about this particular episode, and then we got down here to record this episode, and oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, and
what's going on?
The funny thing is since we are not generally huge Rian Johnson fans, it definitely dawned on me that Rian Johnson directed that particular episode of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So I thought it was very apropos and just fits with the narrative I have of him. Although he did probably direct like the best episode of Breaking Bad. So I could
Yeah, that's true.
But neither, digressing here nor there. So I'll tell you this, I did not kill the fly. I trapped said fly. It'll probably die later because I'm not going to let it out because I'll probably forget by the time this podcast is over. But I did not smash him. So if he can get out, he'll survive.
There you go.
It's up to fate. But tonight, let's cover a couple of different things. It's going to be a big week for us because this is our last week of only particularly doing this podcast, right? Because our second podcast, The Watchmen from Nixon, will officially launch its basically the main premise of why we're doing this.
Yes.
Is the Watchmen television series. So pretty excited for this. Have you seen any new previews for this?
Yeah, there've been, that most recent one that came out, and I'm just getting hyped for it, man. Obviously, we did on the Watchmen for Nixon podcast, we reviewed the movie, Watchmen. I have read the graphic novel. It's been quite some time, but all that being said, very much looking forward to the series, and each preview I see, each trailer that I see just hypes it that much more. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit on this podcast since this obviously the Aliens and Cowboys covers pop culture, and this is going to be part of pop culture.
Absolutely.
So, especially because HBO's, great season finales to The Righteous Gemstones and second season of Succession, which was phenomenal. And I'm hoping to kind of talk about that a little bit more in detail next week. I'm going to try to get a couple of people on here that have never been on before and kind of get their hot take on that. We'll see. Not sure if they're going to commit or not. If not, then I'll definitely talk about it. But the finale of Succession was amazing. Righteous Gemstones was great. But HBO ended it right. Both these shows 1 week before. We're going to get The Watchmen.
Yep.
We're going to get his Dark Materials coming. There's a couple different things they have starting, which are going to be probably pretty successful.
I think so. I mean, HBO just has such a great track record of show after show after show that just delivers every time.
Yeah, they really do.
It's amazing. So with all of that goodwill, I guess you could say that they have, there's no reason to think that Watchmen or his Dark Materials won't do well. I think they'll both be fantastic. So
well, and it's interesting because I read a couple articles this last week about The Watchmen and about how it is considered to be the greatest graphic novel of all time and how it's considered to be an extremely tough adaptation.
Yeah.
Even though the movie is arguably an almost scene-for-scene shot, from my understanding, again, not read the comic book, but without, a squid monster here, a squid monster there, it is predominantly
Yes,
same
exactly.
movie. This is very, mirror image of the comic book. And I think a lot of people are curious where Damon Lindelof is going to take this because he didn't want to do the comic readaptation. He didn't want to remake the movie. So what he did is he took the storyline, moved it into the future. I want to say like 37 years. So the actual events of the movie / comic book did take place. Okay. Now I don't know if they're going to do it as in like a squid monster took place or if there was an actual, radiation blast. I don't think that they've come out and said which route they're taking.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious because in the preview they do show all the squid falling. So I'm not sure exactly which route they're taking. But this is going to set alternative reality in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a time period of no internet, no cell phones, and after Nixon has basically I don't think he's passed on, but given up the presidency after multiple terms, Robert Redford, who plays himself, is going to be the president, playing himself, as in Robert Redford got elected president. And, this is going to be I think it's going to be a really dark show.
I think so.
So what are let's just, What are your hopes? What are you hoping to get out of this show?
Yeah, I really want them to stay true to the spirit of the original graphic novel, of course, as well as the movie adaptation. Just like you said, despite the fact it received criticism when it first came out, I really enjoyed it. And I think that it very successfully translated a lot of the themes from the graphic novel, including just the tone of it overall, of course, which sometimes that can be hard to capture, I would say. But a lot of that very successfully translated to the screen already. So I want to see that. I want to see them take these characters that we know and do some unique things with them as well. Because at this point, we know that Dr. Manhattan is going to be involved in some capacity. We know that Ozymandias is going to be involved in some capacity. So I want them to really explore those two characters especially. I know that they're going to be using brand new characters. That's the whole point of setting it in the setting that they did. But I really want to see them still dive into what has transpired since the events of the original graphic novel and the movie for that matter, and see what has happened to those two pivotal characters, because those are the two kind of characters that event hinges on the most. So while I want to see them dive into some of the controversial elements, certainly, I still want to see them explore what's happened with those two pivotal characters as well, and what the fallout, quite literally, has kind of happened and transitioned where we're at currently there. So
yeah, and
how about you?
I agree with you. A lot of what you said. I want him to be true to the story. It's going to be different because the characters are going to be different.
Correct.
We do know that there are going to be a couple of the main characters. So we know Silk Spectre will be there.
Yeah.
She'll be older. We're going to know that Dr. Manhattan should show up. Night Owl might be there. We're not really sure.
Right.
Looking Glass, I know, was a character I want to say from the first or from the comic book. I don't think he was in the movie really. Much more than maybe a shot of him. But they're gonna, and then obviously the most obvious thing here is the absence of Rorschach, because of his, spoiler alert, in the movie, he dies. But what's great is it looks like a group of white supremacists have taken his mask and donned it and basically created this alt-right paramilitary group. And I want to save this for our Watchmen episode because I have a pretty hot take about this, about these guys. But I think it's going to be interesting because I think this show can maybe have some social commentaries that we weren't prepared to have on a show like this because of this group that exists. The premise of the show is that the cops, some massacre takes place one night, in the past that we don't see, or not in the present, and basically forces all the cops after this massacre to start wearing masks to protect their own identity. So you have the villains are wearing masks, the cops are wearing masks, the superhero arguably people are wearing masks. So it's just kind of going to be an interesting take on identity.
Yeah,
and I'm excited for that. And like I said, I want to save some of our stuff for that particular podcast.
Makes sense.
But what I want to ask you about is Damon Lindelof came out this week, I want to say. And he made some interesting comments. And the comments now have people guessing on, is this going to be more than a miniseries? Because he prefaced it as this season of television for The Watchmen has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That it is going to satisfy, be a satisfactory ending to this first season. And that has me concerned as obviously somebody who's trying to do a podcast to cover this show. I'd like it to be a multiple season thing. That's why I did this. But he has not committed to a second season. It has not been renewed for a second season, which sometimes I know it does take a while, but sometimes some shows get renewed before they even go live.
Very true.
And so it is interesting they have not renewed this yet. So what are your takes on this? The idea that Lindelof might not be involved in a second season. He said he's not sure if he would be the showrunner for it or if he will simply end it after the first 9 episodes.
I'm okay with both of those things happening. So in terms of him not being involved if there is a second season, I have faith in HBO that they'll find the right person to continue telling that story. So as great as I think this first season will be, if there is a season 2 and he's not involved, it'll be just fine. I have full confidence in HBO to make that happen. Also, in regard to there only being 1 season, while yes, it doesn't help us out too much for covering it in a podcast, I think it's very important that that happens. I think not most maybe, but more shows should do that. Now, 1 season, that's obviously pretty short. It is a mini series at that point. But to have maybe just a couple seasons, tell your story. I've commented this in the past. Tell your story that you want to tell. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Don't drag things out beyond the point where things no longer make sense and you're trying to struggle and grasping at straws to even make a plot make sense at that point. Just end it. Tell your story. Take 2 or 3 seasons if you need it. Put a bow on it. move on to the next great series. And I think it'll help with fatigue that happens on some shows. The Walking Dead is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
Viewership saw a huge decline. They tried to pivot away from that, which is something we can talk about in just a minute as well, to see if that pivot helps, especially with shows that have run for a very long time already. But overall, one season, if it's a solid single season and ends up being more of a miniseries, I will be okay with that as well.
Okay, well, a couple things before, and I like your idea or your point you're going to make about the idea of shows running too long and needing a pivot. And so let's definitely pin that, come right back to that in a few minutes.
Sure.
It's interesting because if he does make this a one-season show without saying it's a one-season show before it starts, I think is also a big letdown. Because there are some people asking, why remake this show? Why turn this into a television series then? You know, and I think that if that was the goal, I guess the question is, why do this? You know, what's he trying to get out of this? Because I believe that he's passed this up before, that he originally didn't want to do this. Well, and then my next, you know, it's 6 episodes, from my understanding, have been leaked, or not leaked, but sent to writers, critics. And Alan Sepinwall, who's a very famous television critic, came out, I believe, today and tweeted out that this is his favorite show on television.
Nice.
So that's some pretty high praise. But like I said, some of the critics, I believe, have said that this is a show that if they're going to set up a second season, so far in the first 6 episodes, there's no evidence of that. Again, just has me worried.
Yeah. You know, I'm not worried about it. And I think it harkens back to the conversation we had. I think it was during the Watchmen review on the Watchmen for Nixon podcast that we did this episode, or had this particular conversation, I should say. But that now is a very timely moment for a story like this as well. And we discussed the fact that could that movie have been, you know, if it was going in theaters today or being made into a movie that would be released today, how would that fare versus when it originally released? So I think this is a way for us to kind of see how that'll work. That they are releasing this. Once again, they're not going to shy away from controversy for some very important cultural elements that are going to be undoubtedly addressed in this show. So I think it's a very timely moment for this to be released and for them to tackle those kinds of situations. So,
no, I agree with you on that. I do think it's kind of funny because you brought up the idea of what if this movie came out today, you know, and would it be successful? I think that this television series needs the comedian. I think that if the comedian was in there, I don't think you need Rorschach. I think Rorschach is great in the movie. I'm very fascinated by the people basically taking his identity and usurping it. So I'm okay without Rorschach. This is the type of film I think that or the series, I would love to see the comedian here with Damon Lindelof. I'd like to see how he takes it. I'd love it if Jeffrey Dean Morgan came back and played it. I think that would have been fabulous. I think he was a phenomenal choice and played it great in the movie. And so his character, I think, would be pretty awesome in this type of series. I'd like to see what Damon Lindelof does with it.
Yeah, very true. And I wonder if they're going to have somewhat of a, I guess you could say, social commentary stand-in for the comedian as well, because I think a lot of the commentary hinged on what his actions were, on what the comedian did in the original Watchmen, both graphic novel and in the movie. So in terms of something that absolutely could be addressed in today's society as well, I have to imagine that there will be a character that's kind of along those lines. You got to be careful not to make a copy, like a knockoff of the comedian. Same with Mandalorian, we talked about that, right? Like, let's not get too much into these characters that are, for all intents and purposes, this other character, but we're not going to call them that. Like, it's a fine line to walk, but I think they're going to have a character that's probably somewhat similar to the comedian's mindset so that they can tackle that particular aspect of society.
Sure, and hopefully so. I hope you're right. You know, fingers crossed on that. Okay, so we can leave the Watchmen alone for now. Again, we're going to cover that starting this. Essentially, the show will be on Sunday, starting October 20th, so that would be this Sunday.
Yep.
Which is going to be great.
Coming up real
quick. We
quick.
will cover this podcast, Watchmen for Nixon again. Every Monday, we should have that podcast recorded, so you should either get it Monday night or first thing Tuesday morning for your commute. So if you haven't listened to, again, our reviews of the Watchmen movie, or we even reviewed V for Vendetta, just since it's an Alan Moore comic as well, we put both those out there. So go out there, give those a listen, see what you think. But Joe, let's circle back to this idea of television series that are shorter. So, and you said you prefer, just so I can make sure I remember this correctly, you said you prefer short television series, correct?
Absolutely.
What's an ideal length of a season for you?
And
a series.
Sure. I would say the ideal length is 3 seasons. Three seasons long, because you can hit on every major plot arc, or should be able to with correct writing, within those 3 seasons. So now you could obviously do this within 1 season if you want. Godless, which I rant and rave about all the time. It's phenomenal. It's on Netflix. Go watch it immediately. But there's a mini-series, essentially, where they tell their entire story very beautifully within 1 season. It's self-contained. I obviously will love a second season, but at the same time, for it to stand on its own, perfect. Otherwise, if you're going to have multiple seasons, in a series, then 3 seasons should be your maximum.
You're saying maximum 3 seasons per television series?
Yes. It would do a couple things. One, it would make you have to tighten up the writing. You can't stretch things out beyond a point. I mean, suppose you can try to stretch certain things out, but if you know you have 3 seasons to work with, all those filler episodes, which undoubtedly happen in just about every TV series I've ever seen that runs for, let's say, 5+ seasons, you can kind of do away with them. You shouldn't have a lot of the filler that doesn't make any sense. You can take that out. In addition to that, use those seasons to set up your story arc. Season 1, obviously you have the beginning, you're developing your characters. Season 2, you can start to develop those characters further and start to close things out by Season 3, and you have this nice, self-contained story that hopefully won't drag on past the point where it no longer matters anymore. And I think that's a lot of the struggle with these series that run and run and run just because they're trying to keep their ratings up, they're trying to keep viewers. And I get that from a money-making standpoint. But from a quality of television perspective, I think that too many series go long past their expiration date.
How many seasons of The Mandalorian do you want?
I want 3 seasons.
Only 3?
I want 3 seasons.
Okay.
Now, this is where, obviously, the super nerd in me for all things Star Wars, it's kind of at war with itself, right? I'm at war with myself over that a little bit because I could watch Star Wars content forever and be perfectly happy with it. But at the same time, give me 3 solid seasons. I think that is plenty of available episodes to have some really cool stuff happen within the Mandalorian series, right? But then tie it up and now give me something Old Republic related, right? Tie it up, give me something maybe set so far in the future of what we know has happened in the Star Wars universe that it'll be completely brand new to everyone, because that's not something that's really been explored. What happens essentially after Episode 9? We don't know. So, tie those things up, give us nice contained stories, and then move on to your next story and allocate your resources to making that phenomenal instead of trying to cast your net too wide.
Can you give me any examples of television series that are multiple seasons long that were successful at 3 seasons?
Penny Dreadful.
Okay.
Comes to mind. I think that's a really good one. How many seasons was Breaking Bad? I'm curious.
Breaking Bad, I want to say, was 6.
Was that 6? Okay. And I know that's kind of the exception to the rule, I think, because overall, from, once again, having not seen it, but my understanding is that really from start to finish, maybe some filler episodes aside, as a very strong series. Is that safe to say?
There's some series, and we can talk about that in a second. I know Deadwood's 3 seasons.
Yeah, there's a good one.
I'm trying to think of any other shows I can think of off the top of my head. Now, it's interesting you say 3 seasons. So, right now, I'm on the record as saying the best television series right now, and this is not a hot take because everybody has this take right now because it is, in fact, the best television series on TV, is Succession.
Sure.
Their second season they just ended last Sunday, was amazing. And it's fascinating as a television series because it's really a show that can show you don't need to have anything outside of dialogue as long as you do it correctly. Okay? This is a show that's only about people talking. Sure, the backgrounds are amazing. The locations are great.
Sure.
There's no action in this. There's no fighting. There's no death. There's no magic and swords and dragons. And there's no, blah, blah, blah. But these guys are just sitting in a room talking, and it is the most amazing thing on television. The reason why I bring this up is there's a theory out there that this is going to end in 3 seasons. That they are going to win all the Emmys next year, finish out strong, and it's basically starting the 3rd act of a play, as I've heard the metaphor being made for it.
Sure.
That would be amazing. I don't know if HBO would let that happen, because HBO generally does let things go long, like Sopranos. I know that they've let a couple other shows off the top of my head. I'm trying to think what they were. Sorry, not Wire. They obviously ended The Wire probably early. But I think that they have that tendency to also push things, like Entourage, Ballers even, I think has probably gone longer than it needs to go.
Sure.
The Newsroom. Actually, funny, I started watching that this last weekend. It's the Aaron Sorkin, Jeff Daniels show, and that's only 3 seasons. And I don't know off the top of my head. I have to look it up. Did it end because Aaron Sorkin wanted it to end, or did it end because it was bad ratings?
Well, and we talked about Fleabag a couple episodes ago.
2 seasons.
2 seasons
Ended,
long.
right.
And that has huge critical acclaim, and
Right.
rightfully so from everything I've heard of it. That's in my queue to watch, so to speak. So
Here's what I'll tell you. I don't know if I'm on board and agree with the 3 seasons, and let me explain why. There are a lot of ways you can pivot a show to keep it fresh. And I think that if a show sucks, end it. I don't care. If the show's not
Right.
good, get it out of here, right? That's fine. Like you can I'm definitely believe you can keep shows going for way too long. Dexter went way too long. Weeds went way too long. House of Cards went way too long. There are shows that absolutely go longer than they need to. However, you and I are both big fans of Justified. Mm-hmm. Justified ended at the exact same time that Graham Yost and Timothy Olyphant both wanted it to end. That was their premise, right? Mm-hmm. That's about 6 seasons. 6, maybe 7. I think it's 6. I think that there are shows, and I can give you some examples here, like Homeland is probably the best at doing this. Homeland, about 3 seasons in, there's a pivotal event that takes place, and in the 4th season, they completely pivot to a different direction, and it works, and it's very successful, and it kind of remakes the show on the fly midway through it. Okay, you can bring in characters midway through a series to be a season regular for one particular season, and that could refresh the show. The Shield did it with Forrest Whitaker and Glenn Close. Sopranos did it with Steve Buscemi. When Sopranos, from my understanding, was only supposed to be about a 4-season show originally, and they pushed it out to 6, technically 6-1 and 6B, even though it's really technically 7 seasons.
okay.
They do that to not renegotiate contracts.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It's a way to screw over the actors there. But Game of Thrones. If the book had an ending 2 seasons earlier, they probably would have ended it as well, right? But I mean, probably not. It's too much of a moneymaker at that point. But
Yeah.
My point is you can pivot a television series as long as you're keeping it fresh. I mean, there are some shows like, I know they have no bigger meaning, but look at Big Bang Theory. Mostly they're comedies. And you look at something like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. These are like 12, 14-season shows.
Oh, yeah, they run forever.
About nothing.
Yes.
Right? But then I look at, say, my wife will, I can't believe for the life of me that Grey's Anatomy is still on television. Now, the only way they pivot is they kill everybody off and they bring in a whole new cast of people every time. So, of course, it's a brand new show.
Exactly.
Because you have only one person that's a holdover, right? But that's what I'm saying is there are ways to pivot shows and to make them fresh without having to end them. Because there are some characters that you really can get a full flesh out past 3 seasons. For the Sopranos fans out there, I cannot imagine if Sopranos ended after 3 seasons, how they would have made it so compelling to give you that ending that they did, as controversial as it was at the time, and had you been okay with it, right? Same thing with The Wire. The Wire is only 5 seasons, but I don't know if they could have told that whole story that he was trying to in 3. And I think that some shows need that extra time, like Breaking Bad did, and it did it well.
Sure.
Dexter could have probably ended 3 seasons earlier because they clearly didn't know what they were doing with it. Same thing with Weeds.
Sure. And you hit on a common theme here that I think is very important because I agree with you as well in regard to, one, pivoting. If it's a successful pivot that kind of reboots the show in a way, almost like a soft reboot, I guess you could say. So they pivot in a different direction to revitalize it. And if they manage to make intelligent writing and can keep the series going past that point, perfect. Same with something that if they truly need more seasons and the writing is so good that it justifies that, then yeah, absolutely in those cases as well, sure, 4 or 5 seasons if they can keep the writing tight and if they genuinely need that much more time to tell the story they want to tell without it feeling rushed. I respect that as well. It's the stories that get long-winded and that go well beyond the point that they ever should have that is primarily driving my argument. On the flip side of that, though, as well, and admittedly, this is more maybe me being selfish about this too, but with the amount of content, we've talked about this, that's out there, if I see a series, regardless of how much I might want to watch it, that is 7 seasons long or 8 seasons long, even if it's only 10 episodes a season, as much as I might want to watch that, I can't bring myself to start it. Okay. Whereas something that if I'm getting in on the ground floor, so something that's currently running, sure, easier for me to tune in there. Similarly, if it's something that has come out maybe 10 years ago, but it's only 2 or 3 seasons long, I'll check that out probably before I will a show that might be better that has a longer run. It might be counterintuitive, but I know that I can invest my time in a show and get the conclusion with far less of a time commitment that way. So with all these streaming services and the variety of content that's out there, once again, I know this is more selfish take on this topic, but that's also why I want to see them tighten up these series so that people can actually watch these in a reasonable amount of time without having to commit to 10 seasons of a show just to get the conclusion.
No, I agree with that. As I started to knock off like shows off of my list of things to complete here, I'm hoping that the Newsroom, because it's only 25 episodes, I will commit to that and knock it out.
Sure.
I have a question for you though. So can you name a television show that you have started that you just don't like beyond all the popular acclaim it gets? So, for example, there are 2 shows that, or at least one particular show that I would think I would have loved, just can't finish it out, and that's Deadwood.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
Interesting.
I would think I'd love Deadwood.
I would think you would love that too.
Deadwood. I would think I like the time period of Deadwood. I loved Godless. A very similar type of take on things.
Right.
But for some reason, I can't go back to it. I can't force myself to watch it. Do you have any shows like that you can think of that you have started? So not a show that you haven't seen. You've had to have seen it.
Right.
And stopped it.
Well, honestly, the one I've mentioned now multiple times I need to give another chance. Breaking Bad.
Okay.
That's one.
Which off camera, I told you.
Yes.
And we can talk about this in a minute. I watched El Camino. And I said that maybe, even though it's technically the ending,
right,
is if you watched El Camino as a 2-hour movie and you were okay with that and you enjoyed it, it would probably be worth your time than to go back and actually watch the show since it's incredible. It's that much better.
Sure.
Plus, I think Netflix does have a 3-minute recap. Maybe that recap gets you excited. I have no idea.
Maybe so.
Could be.
And I mean, I know there's so many quotable moments. I've heard positive reviews. I don't think I've ever heard anything bad about this show. You think I would prioritize this and put it at the top of my list. But I got a couple episodes in. Excuse me. Admittedly, this was years ago. We got a couple episodes in, and for whatever reason, I was just like, okay. I mean, I certainly could appreciate it and see why people liked it so much, but it just wasn't doing it for me at the time. So
I agree with you. And I watched it through, but that first season is tough.
Gotcha.
Like, that is a slow burn to start. And it's, you probably have to get to the last, I don't know, probably 3 episodes of that series before it kind of takes off.
Okay.
But I mean, it's obviously, anybody would tell you it's absolutely worth it. It's probably one of the greatest television series of all time. And because not only, it's kind of weird. It's the one show that, that's such a great show that the world opened up. Like, if you think about opening up a world of television, obviously Game of Thrones will have a prequel series coming out, but and there are successful spin-offs, obviously Cheers and Frasier and stuff like that.
Yeah, very true.
But Breaking Bad not only has now spun off a very successful prequel series, they spun off a successful, sequel movie. And it's really interesting because of all the great dramas, like I said, it's got a world. It built a world of characters. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was something else coming down the pipeline from Vince Gilligan sometime.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they go back to this well? People love it. People are excited about it. I've seen Better Call Saul. I think it's actually pretty good. I'm not one to make the argument. I have heard other people make the argument that some people think that it's better than Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Not saying they're crazy. I get their point. I understand their argument.
Sure.
I just happen to not be on the same page with that. I still think it's very good, though. Yeah, I don't know. I understand what you're saying about season limits. And again, I know that we kind of started this monologue here on, this dialogue on The Watchmen. I'm just hoping he gives us more than one season. Granted, if this podcast ends after one season, The Watchmen for Nixon, we're always going to podcast about something.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I've got a million ideas, whether they fail. It really reminds me of the show The Office, when Michael Scott basically says, if you buy me out or this one paper company fails, I'll start another paper company, and I'll start another paper company, and I'll just do it because I have nothing better to do.
Right.
I'm just going to podcast from now on. And so whether you listen or not, we're going to be here. So we'll find something to talk about.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Hope The Watchmen takes off. I think it'll be pretty exciting. So we'll see about that. I did say, I mentioned briefly I did watch El Camino, since we're kind of on this topic. what's your take on television series needing a movie to finish it out?
Yeah, I'm kind of against that as well. I know that in certain circumstances, you might want to try to tie up any loose ends if your show gets canceled prematurely. So I can totally understand that. The reason why I was kind of hesitant to say I'm against it is because of Firefly, for example. Shining example of why a movie can be successful, at least for the fan base, to conclude a series that, once again, maybe didn't get the full run that it deserved, right? But generally speaking, I think it's tough. The reason why I'm against it overall is because you are taking a format that's meant to be told over a variety, or rather over many episodes, and now you're trying to wrap things up in a relatively very short amount of time. I think the problem that they run into usually is that everything ends up feeling very rushed, which in my Firefly example, the movie called Serenity that came out a few years after Firefly was canceled, as much as I love it, it does feel kind of rushed because they're trying to tie up everything that wasn't completely addressed. So my question to you, one, I want to know your take on that as well, but specifically for El Camino, because they do wrap up Breaking Bad, is my understanding, like they conclude everything by the end of the series, does this feel tacked on, or does it feel warranted enough that it was a story worth telling?
Okay, so let me approach it this way. I never needed to know what happened to Jesse Pinkman.
Okay.
He was the star of, El Camino. I do think I haven't seen a ton of, like, say, I know Deadwood had a movie, right?
It did.
Serenity, for Firefly. I think that the Veronica Mars show, which I never saw, had a movie.
I think so. I also never saw that one.
Entourage had a movie. I mean, there are some shows that are doing these movies. Even Prison Break had a movie at one point before they relaunched the television series again. I think, and I'm not the first person or the only person to ever make this argument, but it is true that these movies are kind of like they provide lip service to fans.
Yeah, very much so.
It's almost like, hey, let's just get the gang back together, make everybody feel good. Let's wrap stuff up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, this particular series, I did not need to know what happened to Jesse Pinkman, but I think it was still really fun to watch it again. It's great to get back into that universe, because that character, Jesse Pinkman, is not in the prequel series. And so if you're, he's a fan favorite, people love the character, people want more of the character, it's great, But at the end of the day, it doesn't change what I think of Breaking Bad. I didn't need this. Mm-hmm. I did watch it. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. I think it's good. I think if you watch this, it's really going to make you want to dive back and rewatch Breaking Bad, because that happened to me. So I watched it, and I immediately the next day was like, you know what? I should give this a shot again. I want to rewatch it again. And I started watching it, and I stopped because as soon as I know I'm going to get into this, I'm going to stop watching whatever it is I'm watching. I can't check it off my list, right? And I'm trying to knock stuff off my list to get caught up.
Exactly right.
So do you have a series that you want them to bring back for a movie? Is there anything you can think of?
Ooh, I want them to bring back for a movie.
Now, I'll say this. The Sopranos was always rumored to have a movie coming until James Gandolfini passed away.
Okay.
They do have a movie coming, but it's now a prequel movie that's going to follow Tony Soprano's father. And it's actually going to star James Gandolfini's real-life son, I think his name is Michael, is actually going to play the young version of Tony Soprano. So that's kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's
but
right.
I know that is a movie that's coming down the pipeline. And so I guess any series that you like that you would say, I want a movie to finish that out.
Man, there's honestly nothing is springing to mind. The reverse of that is true. Wherein and actually for a lot of those wishes, we're going to get them with Disney Plus. But where you have a movie that does really well, that's something I'm very interested in, and I want to see it expanded. There are countless examples I have for that where I'm like, oh, this movie was awesome, but I'd love to see them explore this in further detail to get a TV series out of it. But the reverse of that, where a TV series kind of bringing back for a single run movie, not really. Nothing's springing to mind anyway.
What about a movie for Justified? So with Justified, basically all of the main characters survive. There was a podcast I listened to one time where they recommended for Tarantino's 10th and final film for him to take a stab at an Elmer Leonard character and bring back his viewpoint of Raylan Givens. And I think a
That'd be
Tarantino
interesting.
version of Raylan Givens, especially if Timothy Olyphant stars in this, would be pretty classic. And that would be amazing. I want to say that was on the podcast just so I can give credit to it. I want to say it was The Watch, which is a Ringer Network podcast. I want to say that was a viewpoint Chris Ryan had. He's the host of that show. I listened to that. It's a very good podcast. Go out there and listen to that. It's great. But it's really interesting because I love Justified. It's one of my favorite shows all time.
Right.
I really like Timothy Olyphant. I think the character's great. I have two or three books by Elmer Leonard that actually have the Raylan Givens character in it, so I know exactly what he's talking about. A lot of movies of Elmer Leonard's books have been made into movies, and so I think it'd be kind of interesting. I'd like to see him take the dialogue, and that would be great if you could really give me Walton Goggins.
I was going to say, can you imagine
with
Walton
Tarantino
Goggins
dialogue?
in there?
I'm all for that. I wouldn't care what anybody would say. Sign me up. I don't need DiCaprio. I don't need Brad Pitt.
Right.
Give me Tarantino. Give me Timothy Olyphant. Give me Walton Goggins, and give me a Justified essentially movie. Phenomenal. I stand for that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it will be interesting coming forward with what the Sopranos movie has and what other movies are going to potentially come down the pipeline.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. I think Disney Plus, these movies that you're asking for, that you want television series for, you're probably actually going to get it to the detriment. And sometimes
quite possibly
less is more. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm worried about. I want to briefly talk about a couple other things here.
Sure.
So, speaking of additional movies coming down the pipeline, they released some casting information for the fourth Matrix.
Sure did.
Okay, so they talked about Jada Pinkett coming back for Niobe.
Yep.
And they brought up Neil Patrick Harris.
Right? And I think of the two of those castings, I think Neil Patrick Harris was confirmed
Correct.
as being in there, whereas Jada Pinkett Smith is rumored, I think, at this stage.
Not a fan of this.
So you were not a fan of this.
Not a
Okay.
fan of Neil Patrick Harris being in the Matrix.
Okay. All
Are
right.
you?
Why is that? I'm just curious.
When I think of Neil Patrick Harris, I think most people think of How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
So Neil Patrick Harris was in the movie Gone Girl with Ben Affleck and what's her name, Rosamund Pike, and he played a serious character. His character gets brutally murdered during a sex scene, but it was just so out of character for him to play this role that I cannot imagine anywhere where he's going to exist in the Matrix that is going to be believable to me that Neil Patrick Harris is not Neil Patrick Harris.
Okay.
So I'm going to have a hard time separating the guy from Barney from whoever he'll play in the fourth Matrix, or really any role he's going to do after this.
Okay. Fair enough. I approach this from, I guess, a completely opposite perspective. But I also have a different first image of Neil Patrick Harris than maybe most people with Barney from How I Met Your Mother. It's actually from Starship Troopers.
Okay.
So Neil Patrick Harris, he's not the main character in that movie, but he does play one of the characters from Starship Troopers. And I think this was the first thing I had ever seen Neil Patrick Harris
I think
in.
he was in Doogie Howser.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He's in Doogie Howser, of course, as well. I had not seen Doogie Howser. So for me personally, the first thing I ever saw Neil Patrick Harris in was Starship Troopers.
You're right.
Yes. So once again, more of a bit part, honestly, but he does have some comedic moments. He's kind of the comedic relief at certain parts in that movie. But seeing him in that kind of role while still bringing humor to it, I can absolutely see Starship Troopers in mind, combined with The Matrix. The character that also came to mind that we already had in The Matrix was Mouse from the first Matrix movie.
Okay.
I can absolutely see Neil Patrick Harris playing a character similar to Mouse and still see him kicking ass in The Matrix, honestly. I think that'd be a great way to juxtapose kind of our popular conception of Neil Patrick Harris and then show him be a total badass within the world of The Matrix, but still bring the comedic relief. I think it's perfect, dude. I'm excited for that.
Oh, I'm not here for him to be a tough guy.
I don't think he needs to be, though. Like, do you remember? Okay, so in The Matrix, once again with Mouse, he's kind of goofy. He's the one who programs the girl in the red dress, right? So he's kind of got this, potty sense of humor, right?
Correct.
But then in this final stand, he's the dude who pulls out like the chain guns to try and hold down the phone essentially so they can get out of the Matrix. Like, it's this sudden shift in character. And for that one moment, he goes from being goofy to being like, oh, this dude's ready to throw down if he has to. And I can see Neil Patrick Harris doing that.
I understand. Let's go through some of his IMDb. Okay?
Uh-huh.
So, not going to count his like voiceovers where he, I guess, looks like he's voiced over some Batman movies, some Justice League movies. But let's just talk about After Starship Troopers. Undercover Brother, comedy. Harold and Kumar, comedy. Right? Harold and Kumar again, comedy. Cats and Dogs. Okay? The Smurfs. A very Harold and Kumar comedy. Muppets, American Reunion, Smurfs 2, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, A Million Ways to Die in the West, Gone Girl, which is his one outlier of a movie, and Downsizing. Like I said, I understand what you're saying. It would be a turn it on its head type of thing. I just am not going to believe it. And I think it goes back to when you take something like this, like when and maybe it's just me, but I talked to you about this. I hated in Attack of the Clones when I finally saw Yoda do a lightsaber battle.
Sure.
I mean, I know it subverted my expectations, but I did not expect him to do a Matrix impersonation in Attack of the Clones. And that ruined it for me. Now, if you were to tell me Neil Patrick Harris will play Mouse and he stays on the ship, okay, I'll accept that. If I see him learn Kung Fu and take out one person, I'm just not going to believe it.
You're just not going to be there for that?
I'm not going to believe that he's going to do that.
I could totally be on board with it, dude. I think, now granted, I get that this is not a great direct comparison by any means because Will Smith has always had that kind of action hero movie portrayal about him in addition to the comedic relief.
Right.
But still, his style of humor, coupled with the fact that he can kick ass, I think is something that Neil Patrick Harris can still kind of channel, where he can be the comedic relief, but still be throwing down.
I understand what you're saying. I will simply say that there's no, outside of Starship Troopers when he was young, there's no evidence to show you that he will be believable as an ass kicker. That's all I'm going to say. Will Smith at least has both in his IMDb.
Right.
Neil Patrick Harris does not, at least in the last probably 25 years.
Dude, he could watch. He's going to be cast in this movie, and he's going to be like the greatest thing about it.
He's going to be John Wick.
Yeah,
and I'm
totally.
Walk out of The Matrix 4. If I even see The Matrix 4.
I'm excited. I want to see him in this movie.
Oh, I just don't know about that. Okay. What I want to talk about, while we're on casting, we might as well just hit the Batman real quick. So, the Batman dropped some casting news.
Yes.
That Jonah Hill is actually not going to play the Penguin.
Right.
And Zoe Kravitz is going to play Catwoman.
Very cool.
What do you think?
I'm totally on board for that, too. Admittedly, the only thing I've ever seen her in was X-Men First Class.
Yep.
So I do not have any other of her material to draw from. But I thought she did great in that movie. So I'm excited to see her as Catwoman in Batman. I think she's going to do a great job. How about you? What do you think?
It's tough because I'm a huge fan for Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
Yeah, that is.
I don't know who.
That's the best Catwoman.
I haven't met anybody who's not a big fan of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and I think the reason why is it's a combination of she's definitely a badass, but there is a superb sexiness to her character. Now, I am not saying Zoe Kravitz cannot do that. Okay, I'm not as up to date on her IMDb, but I do know that she was in Fantastic Beasts. She's in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Again, she'll be in the Batman. Age-wise, I think it works, right? Because Robert Pattinson's Batman. I'm actually really excited for Robert Pattinson's Batman. Not gonna lie, I think he's actually.
I'm too, man. I think it looks really sweet.
Yeah, I agree. I know Nate not with us tonight, but he's a huge Robert Pattinson fan. He just doesn't admit it. He's gonna love that. I'm kind of disappointed that Jonah Hill's not going to play the Penguin.
Me too. I think that would have been a great casting
I thought it would have
decision.
been fascinating for him. And I think that it would have been like not that he needs a jump start to his career, but I mean, he kind of hasn't really been as successful since Superbad. I know he was in Wolf of Wall Street.
I was going to say, Wolf of Wall Street.
But he's not the star of Wolf of Wall Street. He is the absolute star of Breaking Bad, or of not Breaking Bad, of Superbad.
Superbad, yes, absolutely.
Breaking Bad on the brain. I think this would have been great for him, and I think it would have provided him range. I've seen War Dogs, I've seen Wolf of Wall Street, I've seen some of these movies. There was I think there's a movie where he might be a writer and he's dealing with the guy who's a killer in jail, and he's a news reporter. I saw it in theaters. I don't remember the name.
Yeah,
of it.
You're right.
But I just think that this would have been amazing for him. And I would have liked to have, again, I'm excited for Robert Pattinson. I'd like to see them play off of each other. And, I'm kind of disappointed.
Yeah, fair enough. In terms of him not being cast, yes, I'm disappointed in that. But for the casting of Catwoman, I think that's great.
Who do you want to play? Is there anybody you want to play Penguin now?
Oh, man, who would make a good Penguin, man?
I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman would have made an amazing Penguin.
He would have done a fantastic job.
He would have done a Joaquin Phoenix performance
as the
Penguin.
He absolutely would have.
It would have been great. R.I.P. to Philip Seymour.
Yeah, you know who kind of comes to mind, although in stature he'd be way too big, is David Harbour.
Okay.
I think he could absolutely do a fantastic job with playing Penguin. But once again, traditional stature-wise, I think of Penguin as being kind of shorter, not just because of the movie adaptation with Danny DeVito, but just from the comics and the animated series and stuff like that, I tend to think of him as being a little bit shorter in stature. And David Harbour's a pretty big dude, but they could still make that work, I think.
He is very big.
Yeah.
Like, too big. He's a very big guy. Have you ever seen True Detective?
I have not seen True Detective.
There's a guy that's in True Detective. I'm holding him up because I don't really know his name. He's not ever really a main character of anything, but he's kind of showing up in quite a bit of stuff. Let me see if I can locate him here. I'll find it here in a second. He's plays in True Detective. He's in the show Billions. He was in the movie The Joker. He's a little bit taller as well, but I think that he is a fascinating choice. I'm trying to find his. Sorry, you might have to talk for a second.
No, you're good. Another one that came to mind is maybe as an unconventional casting choice would be Josh Gad.
I have seen his name kicked around.
Oh, have you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
But I don't know. I know his how should I say? I know his IMDb. I know he's done serious things. I know he's mostly a comedy writer.
Yeah,
comedian performer.
Right.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm just so disappointed that Josh Gad wasn't there. And I really kind of wish that he was.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're referring to, man. I think what's great, though, about superhero movies a lot of the time, other than the fact that I just enjoy the spectacle of them, but is seeing what a lot of people initially think of as being these unconventional casting choices. And then in so many of these situations, once you finally see the final result in the film, it ends up being fantastic. And this is proven time and again that people that we wouldn't have thought originally would make great comic book characters or great superheroes, they turn in outstanding performances. So I really, really love that and really see how people can transform themselves to become these characters and bring them to life from the page to the screen. I think it's outstanding to see that. People kind of had an outcry at first when Robert Pattinson was cast as Batman. And I think I was on the record back when we first broke that news that I was totally on board for it because this is exactly what excites me about these movies, or at least one of the things that excites me about these movies is seeing these characters and these actors take on portrayals that we otherwise would not have thought they were capable of.
Yeah.
So I'm all on board for the weird on the surface sounding casting decisions.
Glenn Flesher's his name. Sorry it took me so long to find him.
No, that's right.
He's not well known, but he's been in a ton of things. He's in Joker, he's in Billions, he's in Barry, Suburbicon, The Night of, True Detective. He's just got this kind of look to him. He can play such a creepy person, especially from True Detective. He's extremely creepy.
Okay, I gotcha.
I think that he would be an interesting choice. I do worry, just like you said, I think he's a little too tall.
Okay.
And I think that matters in this performance. So, because I don't know. I guess I don't know how tall Robert Pattinson is. Do you have an idea?
I don't know how tall Robert Pattinson is. Although, I guess to flip everything on its head that we've just talked about in
Batman
terms of
suit.
Yeah, in terms of stature of Penguin, Gotham is a perfect counterpoint to that, I guess. Because everything traditionally that we think of with the Penguin, the actor who portrays him in Gotham is none of those things. He's not overly tall, but he's not short.
He's a child.
He's very...
The guy in Gotham? The kid in Gotham? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, the guy who plays Penguin, though.
Oh, the guy who plays Penguin.
Yeah. I was still on the Penguin thought train. Sorry, yeah.
Well, the original Penguin, I think, back in the Cesar Romero days, what was it? Not Meredith Burgess. Was it Meredith Burgess?
Oh, you'd have to look that up. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin to search that one. But whoever played the original Penguin, he wasn't necessarily. I mean, he had a small gut on him, but he wasn't Danny DeVito big either.
Right. And that's something. It's funny how when those very popular interpretations are what we think of, like the zeitgeist of comic book characters, that's suddenly the image. Where if you look back through the comics, the original source material, that's not necessarily what they looked like. That was just one person's interpretation of it.
Yeah,
so
it was Meredith Burgess. So
hey, good call.
Zing on that one.
Kapow!
But yes, because you know who Meredith Burgess is. You ever seen Rocky?
Oh gosh, yes, it's been a while, but
Rocky's trainer Mickey, the really short old man.
Yeah,
that's Meredith Burgess.
Gotcha.
He obviously had to wear a bodysuit at some point, but he was the Penguin, which, like I said, from the 1960s television series.
Yeah.
So, switching from DC, let's move to Marvel. We wanted to talk about, because there's obviously some crazy stuff in the news about it.
Yeah.
Let's play a game with the current or the original cast of the Avengers. Okay, the movie, the main characters.
Yeah.
Let's play a Where Are They Now game.
Let's do it.
Okay, so you can start me off here with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
Yes, Robert Downey Jr. I believe the first role, I think this will be credited as his first role after the Marvel movies, is Dr. Dolittle.
What do you think of that?
I mean, I'm okay with it. I don't think I'm going to go see it, but I think it's still a way for him to be in the family-friendly realm if he's trying to kind of come off of Marvel and still stay in that field, so to speak. I haven't seen the trailer for it. I think there might have been don't quote me on this, there might have been a trailer that dropped. But yeah, that's fine. I guess you can tell I'm kind of impartial to it. I'm not excited for it, but at the same time, good for him. I mean,
did you ever see the Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle?
You know, I did.
Did you like it?
I did like it at the time. Once again, that's another one. It's been ages since I've seen it.
I think they made like 3 or 4 of them though.
Probably,
so I only remember seeing the first one.
I think they did.
He is going to be credited. It looks like he's credited in the Black Widow movie though, as Tony Stark / Iron Man.
Interesting.
So maybe he'll make an appearance in there.
He might, yeah.
But yeah, Dolittle is his first movie, and it's interesting because he's going to make this effort. It's not a part of Disney.
It's not. It is what, Universal?
Yes,
I believe.
Do you think he'll go back to Disney?
Oh yeah, I think so. At some point.
Or do you think he should stay away?
No, I don't think he should stay away. I wouldn't say that.
You think he should do a sequel to Tropic Thunder?
I'm sure people would watch it.
Oh my God.
I do not know how that would go over.
It wouldn't go over well if he did a sequel to Tropic Thunder. But I'm just curious on he right now is kind of untouchable I think he's a bigger Disney, a bigger star to Marvel than Chris Evans was. Again, someday we're having our argument of Civil War.
Which, so for all of our listeners that are now remembering, these guys have been talking about this not only for weeks, but actually probably for months at this point. I deleted my fantastic argument that I had in my notes, and it just completely demoralized me. So I need to...
Whatever fantastic argument you had, I had a more fantastic argument to beat it.
I would have proven you wrong with these fantastic notes that I had, so I'll have to get back to it and outline my argument again. But I digress. We do need to revisit that at some point, yes.
I do think that he needs to stay away from Disney. I'd like him to stay away from Disney.
Okay.
If this mofo shows up in Star Wars, I'm going to riot.
Okay, so if you're talking about a character that would kind of, dare I say, put me off to the movie, for whatever reason, as much as I love Robert Downey Jr., I don't know if I want to see him in a Star Wars movie, which I know goes against what I was talking about with Chris Evans and Brie Larson. I was on board with them. Just something about Robert Downey Jr. If he played a rogue, which is totally stereotyping him,
there are a bunch
he
of
could do a
bums
good
compared
job.
to Robert Downey. Robert Downey Jr. has range. He is a good actor outside of the Marvel universe.
Sure, I don't disagree with that at all.
No proof that Chris Evans can act outside the Marvel's universe.
Yeah, but I have faith in him to do that.
Speaking of Chris Evans.
Yes, I was going to say, wow, what a transition there, Garrett.
So Chris Evans is going to be a part of the movie Knives Out, directed by one Rian Johnson.
For as much as you think you hate Rian Johnson, you seem to actually low-key like a lot of his stuff.
I actually learned I liked the movie, was it Brick?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a 2005 film starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's phenomenal. I guess I really like some of the stuff he does. What he does well, he's done extremely well.
Right.
And what he sucks at, he's really sucks at. Because, and to be fair, he has way more misses than hits. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And I am not going to this Knives Out movie for Chris Evans. I'm going to the Knives Out movie for my man, Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig.
Because I love him.
This movie looks pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, what do you think about this?
I'm excited for this one. I'm definitely more excited for this than I am for Dr. Dolittle. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr. But this is something I do want to see. Once again, we've talked ad nauseum about how I don't really get to see things in the theaters too often, but I do want to see Knives Out. So when that comes out, inevitably on Netflix or Redbox or whatever, I'll go check that one out. But it's got quite a cast. The premise intrigues me. It's got the Chris Evans playing opposite Daniel Craig. I like both of those actors quite a lot, so that alone I'm excited for. And I'm also excited for the fact that Rian Johnson is directing it. I want to see how he directs this movie, what we can anticipate from, I mean, we can't glean anything Star Wars related from a Knives Out movie, but, I'm just curious to see how it goes.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I guess I am surprised seeing this change, though, or kind of the diverging paths that Robert Downey Jr. versus Chris Evans have taken. I would almost have seen that flip-flopped potentially in a way.
Well, it's funny because I think Chris Evans' character from the trailer looks like a Robert Downey Jr. type person.
Yes.
He almost looks like a Tony Stark type personality playing this role. Right. Now, like I said, I'm very excited for, his name is Benoit Blanc, as Daniel Craig. But there's a lady that's going to be in this movie named Edie Patterson. I hope I'm saying her first name correctly. She is phenomenal. I don't know exactly what role she's going to play. Her character will be named Fran. This lady has been in 2 different HBO shows that I've watched.
Oh, nice.
Vice Principals and Righteous Gemstones. If you're currently watching Righteous Gemstones, she plays the sister Judy or Judith. This lady's phenomenal. This lady is the funniest person on TV right now. And I would like to see whatever it is that she's doing right now because she is batting 1,000 from what I've seen her.
Nice.
I mean, she's just so over the top. She is outperforming Danny McBride. I mean, she's outperforming, I hate to say it, Walton Goggins in these scenes. It's really that. She's awesome. And so she's in this movie, and I'm really interested to see her outside of these really, because she lives in the Danny McBride universe right now, and his characters are so over the top.
Right.
And so I'm just excited to see what she'll be able to do outside of playing the normal characters that she plays, because she plays like a sex-crazed psycho in Vice Principals that's sleeping with Danny McBride, and now she plays the sister who's just, I can't even begin to explain her unless you watch the show. She's phenomenal. So, and again, I know Rian Johnson is directing this. I don't know.
Are you a fan of the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law?
The Guy Ritchie films?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a Sherlock Holmes fan.
Fair enough. Yes.
Remember, we've had this conversation that I'm actually an Elementary fan.
You are an Elementary fan. I recall this
It's
now,
a very bad hot take, but I think it's a great take. I think there's more people that need to watch Elementary. I think Johnny Lee Miller is phenomenal and takes it to a different approach. So I've seen all the Sherlocks. I've seen Sherlock from the BBC. I've seen Sherlock from the Guy Ritchie. I've seen Sherlock from Elementary. I've seen Basil, was it Nigel Bruce, I think, and Basil Rathbone.
Basil Rathbone? Yeah.
Back in the day.
The OG.
I love me some Sherlock Holmes. Okay?
Yes. Good deal, man.
My favorite is Johnny Lee Miller.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I was just going to say that is what I'm most excited to see Robert Downey Jr. in next.
Okay.
Is the next Sherlock Holmes movie, which I believe it was confirmed for an earlier release date originally. I think it's been pushed back to a 2021 release date, I want to say.
Could be.
So more to come on that, I'm sure.
I'm excited to see it. I don't need it right now because there's a lot of other stuff on there. So if they want to wait a little bit, I'm okay with that.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. That is one I wish it was releasing sooner because I've loved both of those movies thus far, and I'm really excited for a third one. So
okay, let's move to Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo, after Endgame, is going to appear in a movie called Dark Waters. It is a psychological thriller directed by Todd Haynes. It's going to be Anne Hathaway, Tim Robbins, let's see here, Bill Pullman. So it looks like it's going to be inspired by a true story. Ruffalo is going to play an attorney who covers a dark secret that connects a growing number of unexplained deaths due to one of the world's largest corporations. It is probably not going to be good. I mean, it's going to probably be one of those movies that's going to go to theaters for, if it does go to theaters, as far as like a national release.
Sure.
I think it will go to theaters for a couple weeks and be out, and I think it will show up on DVD or HBO.
Probably, yeah. Which I don't, yeah.
Probably not going to make it.
Sure. I don't think that will necessarily even have to do with the quality of it. It's such a low-key release, it seems like it's probably not going to do well in theaters. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you aware of his filmography?
Not Very, to be honest with you. I know in general, from the little I do know, that he has quite a range, I think.
Did you see him in Shutter Island by any chance?
I did not.
He's great in Shutter Island. Really good in Shutter Island.
Nice.
DiCaprio, if you haven't seen it, it's really good.
Yes.
I think he was pretty decent in the Now You See Me movies. I think he was in 1 and maybe 2. Yep, he's in both. So, I don't know. He's got some range to him. He's a good actor.
He does.
He's
a good actor.
He's really popular or really well known for the movie Spotlight, which I think won Best Picture at the Academy Awards that year. But yeah. How about Hemsworth? I like me some Hemsworth. What about you?
Hemsworth. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what he's in next. Now, we do know with Chris Hemsworth, he will be in Thor, Love and Thunder, right?
Probably.
What a bonkers name, dude, for the next movie. I'm looking forward to it, but it'll be interesting to see how that one goes.
He had the most immediate film after this, and that was Men in Black International.
Yes.
Bombed.
It did hard,
That was not good.
Yeah.
He's going to show up in Jay and Silent Bob reboot. So I kind of want to talk about that. I don't know if this is the right episode to do this on.
Okay.
But I love me some Jay and Silent Bob.
Nice.
And you told me that you're not necessarily a big fan of theirs.
I'm not, but it's also just because I'm not very familiar with those particular movies either. I think I've seen, like I was saying, I was trying to go back through Kevin Smith's filmography. I've seen parts of Dogma. I've seen most of Clerks.
Have you ever seen Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
I've never seen Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
You would like this. There's a scene at the end of the movie where Mark Hamill is playing, it's almost like a spoof on Star Wars. He's playing a villain named Cockknocker. And
that sounds very
there's
Kevin Smith.
The Kevin Smith and the Jason Mewes character are these, Jay and Silent Bob, but they're also this comic book duo that they created called Bluntman and Chronic. And they show these double-wielded lightsabers like Darth Maul, and he ignites one side of it, smokes a bong at the other side of it, and ignites it. It's this great scene, right? I mean, there's a ton of people always in his movies.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fascinating because Ben Affleck has been in most of his movies, if not all of them. Matt Damon's been in a couple of them. But yeah, no, his next film is going to be a movie called DACA. A mercenary is hired to rescue a kidnapped son of a Bangladeshi businessman. It'll star Chris Hemsworth, David Arbor, and then a bunch of people I've never heard of. So, good for them.
Good for them. That also sounds like one that probably won't be in theaters.
Right, but it will be directed by James Hargrove, who was in Atomic Blonde. If you like that movie, which I don't know if you've seen that one yet. It's good. Okay. How about ScarJo? Big ol' ScarJo.
ScarJo. She's got a Black Widow movie coming
up. I love ScarJo.
Yes.
Are you excited for Black Widow?
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. That's admittedly one that, since they're doing, I believe it's a prequel, is my understanding of it.
I think it's got to be since.
Yes, correct.
Spoiler alert.
So, I don't know. I guess my thought process with it is that while I am excited for a Black Widow movie because of the results of Endgame, it's like they're almost halting that forward momentum that they had to now kind of shift and do a prequel.
I just don't know why they didn't do this movie earlier.
Exactly. I am also wondering that.
She's also in Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, that's right. She plays the mother, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which I do want to see that movie.
Which I think, yes, outside of Marvel, isn't that her next film, correct? Jojo Rabbit? Yeah. So
excited for that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold off on one of these guys. Let's go to Tom Hiddleston.
Sure.
So Tom Hiddleston has, he's not leaving the Marvel Universe. He's just not.
I don't even, does he have anything upcoming that's not Marvel related?
He has a television series called What If, but it says Loki voice. So it looks like it's going to be involved in Star Wars. Marvel.
It is, yes. So that What If series will explore alternative pockets, let's say alternative realities within the Marvel Universe, where what if Carter was Captain America instead of Steve Rogers, for example. And it'll explore some different what if scenarios, hence the name of the show. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that one too.
So let's go to Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
So Jeremy Renner, if you're not aware, has really stepped into it this week. He is reportedly put a gun to his own mouth, or in his mouth, and threatened to kill himself, as well as basically threatening to kill, I want to say, his ex-wife.
I believe it's his ex-wife, yeah.
So his work right now is TBD. He is currently set to do What If as well, voicing Hawkeye. If they continue to keep that or not, it'll be interesting, especially with Disney.
Yeah.
No movies currently on his radar. His last movie was Tag, which, did you watch that movie?
I did not.
It's actually better than I thought it was, but I know that it was not universally well liked.
Sure.
But I really liked him in Arrival.
Oh, he was in Arrival as well, yeah.
And I think he actually has good range. He was in the Mission Impossible movies. I think he was supposed to technically be in this last one, but wasn't. So I think they're trying to probably bring him back into the next Mission Impossible movie, which I hope, because those movies are actually really good. And his character was fine. People liked it. But obviously, because of his personal life and putting a gun to his mouth and threatening to kill his ex-wife, amongst other things I want to say he's done of racial slurs, homophobic slurs. I think there's a lot of things he's done recently that would make it that he's probably going to be persona non grata soon.
Probably so.
Now, Hollywood loves to come back. Hollywood will put up a lot of with a lot of things we know. So who knows? Maybe he'll be in the next next Avengers phase. Who knows?
Who knows?
But it's pretty interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. A lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, let's get everybody out of here. So I wanted to talk about this because we were talking about Marvel. Disney Plus. Just quick comment.
Sure.
On this.
Yes.
So Disney Plus is coming in T-minus like 2 weeks now. They did that Twitter release where they dropped the entire catalog to start with.
It is.
What are the things you're looking forward to?
Honestly, some of the old school Disney movies, I'm actually looking forward to those.
Yes.
I think that'll be really interesting to revisit these films that I haven't seen since I was a child. Yes. And to see if my kids love them just as much as I did when they first came out.
Yeah, there's this movie, and I remember I sent this to my wife when it came out. I mean, this movie's not good, but as a child, I love this movie.
Sure.
It's Tom and Huck. So it's Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and I want to say it's Brad Renfro.
Okay.
And they
I
played
don't think I saw that
Tom
one.
Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And God, it was not good. I'm sure if I watch this, it probably doesn't age well because I want to say the villain in that movie has a pretty derogatory name, and by today's standards.
Ah, gotcha.
But it was probably accepted back then, and I'm kind of excited to watch that movie because it was that bad. I mean, I know it's that bad.
Sure.
And I was obviously, who didn't like Jonathan Taylor Thomas back in the day, right?
Right.
So
he was the dude. He voiced young Simba,
yeah,
right?
More importantly, he was in Tool Time.
Oh, of course. He's a Home Improvement. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was all the rage back in the day.
What do you think of their catalog release?
I think it's great. I think it shows how they can enter this market space successfully. And I know that's something that they were probably figuring out how to navigate, especially when they were comparing, which we've talked about this before as well, the amount of original content versus an existing library, and how they can try to enter this market space by offering a product that people will pay for. And I think they're absolutely going to deliver on that. We've talked about their entry price and about how it's incredibly reasonable, especially when compared to some of their competitors. We've talked about the bundling of ESPN, Hulu, and Disney Plus together for a price that is still on par with just vanilla Netflix, so to speak, as well.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to see this catalog of existing properties that we're already excited for, coupled with all of the new shows, predominantly in the Marvel and Star Wars vein of things, of course. This is a home run for them, man. I think they're going to make money hand over fist with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly going to make money on this thing. I mean, you're going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. Everybody I know is going to buy it. I'm excited for the X-Men cartoon as well.
Yes, X-Men cartoon. I think Spider-Man 2 coming back. Yes, Clone Wars animated series, which I know isn't as old as some of these other series we've been talking about, but still, full catalog for that. A lot of the other Star Wars stuff. Old Disney series, super old Disney movies with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, you
when
told me
he was a teenager.
Kurt Russell was in a bunch of Disney movies, and I didn't believe it. I scrolled through that and saw 4 back-to-back images of him.
Yeah,
gotta love Kurt Russell. Yeah, it'll be really interesting, and I assume you're going to get it. So you're going to watch Mandalorian on day 1.
Absolutely, I am on the record with if Mandalorian, if it's 2 a.m. Eastern, I'm going to be real tired in the morning, but I'm going to be a happy dude because I saw episode 1 of Mandalorian.
Sounds like a mental health day.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to Recommendation Corner, which I know we skipped the last 2 weeks, I want to talk real quick, just mentioned Hollywood Reporter dropped their top 100 power people in
yes,
Hollywood.
that is
and
correct.
I kind of looked through the list today. kind of some fascinating things. They actually asked them which podcasts they listen to. I was shocked. None of them said us.
Oh,
So step up our game.
man.
A lot of them actually said Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, which is actually a really good podcast.
Yes.
I also saw a lot of Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History.
Okay.
Really good. A couple of Bill Simmons podcast once, and a lot of the Daily, some NPR stuff like that.
Sure.
But they were also asked if they could control any IP, what would they want to control? What do you think that most people said? If you could be in control or own any intellectual property in Hollywood, what would it be?
Right. Star Wars probably?
It was Star
Is
Wars.
that number one?
Do you think that would? But are you shocked that Marvel's not higher?
I'm not. Just because Star Wars has the history attached to it.
Okay.
I think more people can relate to Star Wars, perhaps, than Marvel. So I can absolutely see why. That is something that it spans generations in terms of fandom. It is something that is universal, primarily universal in terms of people across the entire planet who are familiar with Star Wars.
Okay.
And many of them are fans of Star Wars. So, yes, people with a casual understanding of Star Wars will still probably go see Star Wars movies. That makes total sense to me.
So the other IP everybody said they wanted to own technically was the Bible. But some interesting things I found. So your boy, Taika Waititi, or Waititi, ranked 100.
Okay.
Are you shocked by that?
I mean, he's kind of broken into the scene relatively new, but
He's only 44, so he's relatively young.
Right. Personally, I would have placed him higher than that, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I didn't read through this list in its entirety, so seeing
fair.
who might have been just above him, like, I don't know if it's other very well-known directors, for example, but where's some other random names on there? What stood out to you?
Oh, I've got one. I'm trying to find him because I read this today and it was fantastic.
I think I knew who you were going to... Yes.
James Cameron's answers to the questions are awesome. This is like Charlie Sheen, Tiger's Blood answers. So he was asked, if you could control one piece of IP, what would it be? And his response was, I generate my own stuff, so not really interested in IP. Okay. He then asked, what is the best or worst thing about Hollywood's merger mania? His response was, as long as people pay the bills, and when I show up to work on Monday morning, they haven't closed down my production, I could give a shit. Then they said, if you were to find Bob Iger's phone, which contact would you call? His response was, I call anybody I want. I don't need Bob Iger's cell phone. I mean, just awesome responses to this.
The dude knows he's a boss.
Because what's funny, so he was ranked
throwing
57th,
down.
right. Do you know who number one is?
Who is number one?
Bob Iger. So
that's great. I didn't realize that earlier.
Kevin Feige, which you can talk about Kevin here in a second.
Sure, yeah.
Number 5. What's interesting on this list,
all right.
though, is you see when you get through 1 through 10, you're talking about like power players on the level of like the top 1% of the 1% of Hollywood. So
Yes.
like you'll have like Benny Hoffman-Weiss on this list, and you'll have the Duffy brothers, and you'll have Taika Waititi, and you'll have some of these people that are big time directors, right? James Cameron, stuff like that. Tarantino, all these people. But these guys aren't power players in the sense of like Bob Iger's and these other people who are CEOs of Comcast, CBOs of NBC Universal. I mean, these are like, it kind of reminds me of, speaking of the show Succession, like you're talking about the difference between like billionaires and like millionaires, right? Like it's kind of funny because HBO has these two big power play shows on about rich white families, the Gemstones and the Succession.
Right.
But you're talking about a ginormous wealth gap in between. Gemstones is like a couple $1 million. Succession is multi-billionaire. And the difference in what they can do with their money. And I feel like that's like Bob Iger, CEO of Walt Disney Co. versus 100 spaces down, Taika Waititi.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's a fascinating list. But Kevin Feige, number 5, he might actually jump higher on this next year.
Quite possibly.
Go ahead.
So, man, he has pretty much conquered the Marvel mountain because very recently he has now accepted a position where he's on top of pretty much everything Marvel related. So prior to this, obviously he had control of the MCU, but now he has control of the TV series that are going to be Marvel related, the comic books, obviously, that Marvel produces or publishes, I should say, and then, of course, the ongoing movies. So everything Marvel related, he's pretty much at the top of this now. And I think that's pretty incredible for him anyway. I mean, he is now in a position where, while I think prior to this, obviously they would have listened to his input anyway, just because of his proven track record. Keep in mind, Kevin Feige, he's been doing this forever. He's been doing this since the Disney acquisition, clear back to 2000 with the original X-Men. He was, I think, an associate producer on there for the original X-Men movie in 2000. So he is very familiar with Marvel movies. And now he's going to have really a lot of creative control, more so than he ever has before, over everything Marvel related. So it'll be kind of intriguing to see how much he'll start to tie things together and if that will be a priority of his. I don't know if he'll make that a priority or not. I know he's thinking about going over to Star Wars now. And we joked earlier about this too, that, well, yeah, he's at the top of Marvel. He's got to move on to the next thing now, because where does he have to go with Marvel?
But now he's right back on the top. Like, he's even more on the top than he was.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
He's not just on the top of making movies and controlling that for Disney. He's on literally the top of Marvel now.
Yes, quite literally. So, yeah. Once again, I don't know if this will lead to more tie-ins between MCU and its comic book counterparts versus television shows. Who knows what the future will hold there, but I have to imagine, just as their track record has proved, that they're going to absolutely go full speed ahead on these things. So
fair enough. Okay, let's get to recommendation corner. And again, I know we didn't hit this last couple weeks. And I kind of felt bummed every time we ended the podcast. Give me something to recommend to people.
Yeah. It's actually a YouTube channel that I wanted to recommend for this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Called Corridor Crew. You guys should check this out. Some of you listeners might be familiar with a John Wick spoof that used Nerf guns that came out a couple years ago. And I remember having seen this when it first came out, but having no idea that it was produced by Corridor Crew, which once again, it's a YouTube channel. But they're a visual effects crew, essentially, that makes these YouTube shorts. And they've been, I think, commissioned out to do other things as well. So they might do other special effects and visual effects for other companies, quite possibly. But their focus is definitely on their YouTube channel. Millions of views on most of their videos, it seems like. The specific thing I want to recommend about their channel, though, although there's a lot of fun stuff on there, is Visual Effects Artists React and the Stuntmen React series they have on there. So, as you guys probably know by now, I'm a big visual effects fan, a big practical effects fan, and I kind of lump stunts in there as well, essentially. So they actually, especially with the stuntmen, this is really cool. I think you'll like this too, Garrett. So some of the stuntmen they've had on there have been stuntmen on Daredevil, like the TV series, for example. They've been stuntmen in Civil War, in the Marvel movies. They have the guy who was the stuntman for Black Panther, for example. And they actually sit on this couch together and just watch action sequences. Or for the visual effects one, they sit on this couch and they review visual effects from movies. And one of the hosts of this does a phenomenal job of breaking down, especially for these visual effect shots, how they're achieved and how difficult it is to actually achieve these end results, and why we're tricked into thinking certain things aren't VFX when it actually is, and vice versa. It's really great. I've been really entertained by this channel, so go check it out. I don't think you guys will be disappointed, especially if you like stunts, and if you like visual effects specifically, I can pretty much guarantee you won't be disappointed.
Okay. I'm going to recommend a television show, and I'm going to recommend a television show I've heard is coming out. So I haven't seen it, but I'm kind of excited for it.
Perfect. All right, yeah.
So the first one is going to be, I watched the first episode, and I have recorded the second and third episode of The Unicorn. Starring Walton Goggins and Rob Corddry. It is a show that I was definitely worried about, because I think that this is a weird take for Walton Goggins to take because of his other characters he's currently playing.
Sure.
And the characters he's most recently played. And it's odd to see him play on a family television series like on an ABC show. The premise is that he is a widower and he's basically trying to get out there and start dating again. So I watched the first episode. I thought it was okay, not great.
Okay.
I'm going to continue to watch it to see how it plays out, but I would recommend other people do that as well. I think it will be kind of interesting to see his relationship with the two daughters he has in the show, because I do think that will be well done. And I think it just gives him one more thing to show range on.
Yeah,
so,
that's
although I'm skeptical of this going past more than one season and not being canceled, which would be really heartbreaking to me because I love the Gogs, I recommend that. The other thing is, I heard that HBO Max has commissioned a Grease Rydell High musical television series. I love the movie Grease.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm not a huge musical fan. I like this movie. I watch this movie whenever it's on. If this movie's on like network television, and I don't watch a lot of network TV, but if it's on, I will watch it. I own the DVD. I think this movie's great. Obviously, I know you're not going to get John Travolta to play, or Olivia Newton-John to come back and play this movie.
Right.
But if you could get me the same characters, Danny Zuko, Sandy, Kinnicky, all these people to come back and play these people, I think this could be done very well. I know that the show, I want to say it's called Riverdale, is like an Archie Jughead type comic thing.
Yeah.
I know that's very popular. I know that Euphoria, which is a high school type show on HBO, is very popular. I don't think there's anything wrong with HBO with high school television series. I think that there's a place for that and there's a market for it. And I think that this, I'm going to watch this. I'm hoping this comes out relatively soon. I don't know anything more beyond that they announced this. I don't think they have a cast for it. So maybe this isn't until like 2020, 2021. But I would recommend how about this? In the meantime, I recommend you go watch the movie Grease. Because I think this movie's great, and I'm excited.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, man. So I'll have to check it out.
I'm surprisingly excited for this television show. So again, Unicorn, and I think it's called Grease Rydell High.
Okay.
So I know it's weird, but
no,
whatever.
hey, I don't think it's weird, dude.
So, anyways, we'll let you guys go for this evening. If you want to email us comments, questions, concerns, we're at aliensandcowboys@gmail.com. If you want to get us at Twitter, we're at Alien and Cowboy. We're going to be back with you guys every Wednesday like normal for Aliens and Cowboys podcast. Again, I'm going to try to potentially get some people on here to talk about Succession next week. Hopefully I can. If not, I'll just talk about it. You can just listen to that. And then Joe and I, again, will be back this upcoming Monday for our first episode of the Watchmen for Nixon podcast, where we're going to review episode 1.
Yeah.
So very excited for that.
Definitely.
That's going to come out Sunday. Make sure you guys watch that. Go out there, subscribe to both these podcasts. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell Nate's mom. And I do want to say potentially Nelly might be back with us next week. Not sure. He's still hunting. He hasn't obviously shot anything yet, which is probably good. It's getting colder out there, so I can just imagine
it is getting colder out there.
Having a horrible time. But we'll be back with you guys next week. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.